What's up, everybody? I'm back with another episode of the Keep Going podcast. Today's guest is Coury. He's a purpose-driven entrepreneur, a published author of his book Thoughts for 31, and the founder of Solving Why. After helping scale multiple service companies, he now guides leaders and organizations to uncover their why, using science, faith, AI, and future technologies to build hopeful, high-impact organizations. Adam lives to inspire hope in the world, and that's the most important thing to him. In this episode, we discuss his journey to how he got to where he was today. He also gives a little bonus and gives me a quiz from his book on some introspective things about my life, and also just shares, the reason we all need to keep going, what hope really means, why we need to be more positive, slow down, and be more human. This man is a wealth of knowledge with an amazing soul, and I can't thank him enough for his time. I hope you all enjoy this episode. As always, keep going. Thank you for doing this, Adam. This is awesome. And This is the first video podcast in the office. So.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, so I'm real happy. I mean, obviously I put this stuff here, but getting to look at it on the camera is beautiful because this space means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So when I'm able to invite people in, especially like you, where I can make you some coffee and get comfortable, it means a lot to me. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, dude. I get it. When I have people over at my house, it's like, I think we've lost that in modern tradition, like hosting.
Mm-hmm.
Like people only host people if like it's a party or they're showing something off, but like just having random people over to your house to like have a conversation and like break bread with them doesn't happen very often.
No,
let's go out to dinner. Let's go do this. Like we always have to be doing something. We can't just be present.
Well, that's how it seems like it's like supposed to be. But there's a few friends I have that I'm able to schedule times to come over here and we'll either cook or play pool or things like that. And it's way more meaningful. Even going to do stuff is fun. But even today, getting to sit down with you is great. And it's just an added bonus that we get to be here, get some fresh espresso, sit down. And I think that's why it's meant the most to have moments like this. Maybe I was missing that and not realizing it. But I'm super excited to learn about you today. Because I know last time I was on your podcast, you got to learn a little bit about me. But it's funny, after that came out, my friend James, that you know, reached out to me and was like, no, Adam's like one of the best guys I know. He's such a good guy. And you just never know, like, who knows who. So I have this great interaction with you that was just spontaneous for us because we met on social media from podcasting. But then literally my best friend. And he spoke so highly of you. And when I mentioned it to you, you spoke so highly. And it's just, I guess, goes back to that nice feeling. Maybe that's lost with some. But when you treat people right, it goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree.
It's wild to think that, those pieces can be connected. But from the heart, thank you.
Yeah.
And then as far as you, I want to learn more about kind of what got you into this business consulting space and motivational space, positivity. You push a lot of positivity, but I know there's a reason why you do it, and I want to learn about that today.
Cool. Well, I'm honored. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, brother. Go ahead. How'd you get started?
Yeah, it's a long journey. We can go a bunch of different directions in that. I think in the space of positivity, I grew up in a very loving household. My parents have been together their entire life. If you look at it on paper, like I should be the ideal child. I should have grown up, should have been super successful, should have gone to some nice college, should be married with multiple kids now, well on my way of whatever white collar job I ended up going into, whether that be finance or whatever it may be. And even though on paper, growing up, it looks like that's what my life should be, it didn't end up that way at all. And so, if you really look at, if we want to dig into where I came from, I was raised 2-family household, was homeschooled, growing up.
Are you from here?
From Virginia originally.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got an older brother I have a younger sister and younger brother. Sister lives in Denver. Brother lives down the street from me in Edmond.
Nice.
And then older brother lives in Edmond as well. But I really think, man, something that I've realized over the years of doing consulting and doing business, being in business and the various careers that I've been into is, we live in a world that has really facilitated an environment of victimhood and has really facilitated an environment of almost wanting to see other people fail or wanting to feel like you're more important than other people or wanting to feel like a title or money or something makes you feel superior to other human beings. And, I think from a very young age, that was kind of my thing. Like I went to church growing up. My parents were not religious whenever they were kids and they wanted to bring us into that growing up. And so we ended up, we went to church growing up. We went to a pretty legalistic church. For people that don't understand legalism, it's a very strict doctrine. It's basically black and white. There's no in between. There's no understanding. It's, just very, very black and white, very legalistic, very by the rules. And, there's good in that. Like, like some of my parents did the best they could. But I think growing up, like the gospel or the concept I heard is that you go to church, you build a relationship with God, and the reason you do that is so you don't go to hell. And so it's a fear-based narrative, right? Mm-hmm. But on the flip side of that, this concept of having to be perfect, having to feel perfect, having to appear perfect, because if you don't appear perfect, then you're going to go to hell or you're going to go the other direction, or you're going to be shamed. So therefore, like, you have to present this image of perfection. Well, growing up, that was very confusing to me because I'm a smart little kid and I'm like, well, I know you can't be perfect because it's just not possible, right? Because in our human nature, we're not made to be perfect. And so I think the majority of my life, I lived in a very hopeless narrative. It was, I always have to present this image of perfection or this image of just being a little bit better than I actually am, or this image of, we both played basketball growing up. If you talk to someone about playing basketball, it wasn't, I had X amount of points. I always had 1 point more, or there was always a reason why I didn't perform well, right? Like it was always just excuses. And that really came from an area of hopelessness and inadequacy. And I think growing up kind of in that self-imposed prison, if you will, of reality, it really affected all my relationships, all of my achievements, everything that I did in life, because I was living from a very hopeless and very victim-based narrative my entire life. And so the reason I ended up ultimately getting into consulting is because through a lot of hardship and a lot of trying to look perfect, I finally came to the realization that nobody's perfect. And just the pursuit of perfection, you end up putting yourself into a scarcity mindset, which then blocks you from abundance. And so, why I ended up getting into consulting is I want to help people that have been trapped like me in this ideology of perfection, an ideology of, having to have it all together and having to present this thing, and just learn to become human again. Mm-hmm. Not base your self-worth on a title, not base your self-worth on your net worth, right? But, base your self-worth on something larger, something more simple, something that's driven. And typically whenever I work with people, that comes from whatever your deepest inadequacy, whatever your deepest fear is, typically on the other side of that, whatever the opposite of that, normally is your mission in life that I find. And if you can figure out what that mission is, it supersedes everything else. And through that journey, I ended up coming back to God. But my relationship with God is much different today than it was previously. So that's a very, I would say, it's an overview of basically how exactly I got where I'm at today.
When growing up with that strict religious background, I thought, exactly what you said, that it's going to push you further away until you find your own understanding, and then you're getting closer again. And I'm curious, what about the people that aren't able to dig themselves out of that? That's why your role is so important in what you do. Even if it's not businesses that you're interacting with specifically, but just people that see your content or hear of you or read your book, things like that. It's it's good for those because not everyone can pull themselves out. And something that stood out to me when you spoke was like chasing perfectionism, because it does feel like that's the only route. When you said like one more point and things like that, that is what it feels like, that you have to put on a persona. But I felt as I've grown and I've matured and I've tried to work on those things within myself, you meet more like-minded people like that. And when you do meet those people, it's such a more meaningful interaction. It goes back to what you were saying with hosting friends and having those moments, going back to a human. Was it something that made you hit like a rock bottom where you're like, okay, now I'm going to flip my mindset, I'm tired of being the victim? Or was it a gradual change, just that you seeked yourself? Or what did that look like?
I think it was multiple different situations, a couple of which I like talking about, a couple of which I don't really discuss. I there was a period in my life where after I graduated from high school, I decided that I was going to sell pot. I was going to start selling weed. It was a very logical decision while delivering pizza, by the way. So
2 in 1.
2 in 1. Yeah. So born entrepreneur. And I remember one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned about like why you should not always just try to lie to everybody and present this image of perfection. Was whenever I got arrested, and this was kind of that first like knock on the window of like reality. Whenever I got arrested, I went to jail, got out, and ended up hiring an attorney. Whenever I'm sitting down with my attorney, 20 years old, I'm scared. And I'd gotten set up. Like the whole situation was just a dumpster fire. Like they had entrapped me. They wanted me to come from Oklahoma City to Edmond so that they could get me for trafficking versus just being a general, felony. And so I ended up going to jail because they asked me to, rat on my dealer. And I was just like, sorry, like, I'm just not going to do that. Like, I'm going to take responsibility for what I did. And whenever I ended up finally getting out of jail, my dad left me in for 10 days. Best decision he's ever made, ever. Never been to jail since. Should have multiple times, but never have.
Yeah, and I bet that 10 days felt like a long-ass time.
Oh, my God. Yeah, everybody should have to go to jail at one point. I'm not kidding. Everybody should have to go sit in the system and understand what it feels like, because it really gives you a dose of reality of like whatever you think your low is, there's normally something that's much lower than that.
Oh, yeah.
And so sitting in there really taught me that lesson at a very young age. But I remember whenever I got out, it was one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned. I get out, go to my attorney. Attorney basically says, hey, here's everything. I need you to tell me the truth. Like, just tell me what you did. I lied to my attorney. Because I was that terrified of someone judging me. I was that terrified about, them feeling like they were looking down on me. And this is literally my attorney. And so because I lied to my attorney goes back to the DA and basically presents the information to him. He comes back to me and he's like, dude, they have text messages, they have phone calls, they have witnesses. You just went from being able to solve this really easily to like 5 years. This was over for like 2 ounces of pot. Wasn't that big of a deal. But because of my wanting so bad to be accepted by other people, wanting to feel affirmation from other people, wanting not to disappoint anybody, I literally lied to my attorney, which almost put me in a position to going to jail for like 5 years over like 2 ounces of pot. So that was a very valuable lesson, because what I learned is like, that's where it started, because I then learned real life consequences of like what happens if you don't actually, if you're not real with at least some people. Now, that wasn't the first one, but that was, I think, one of the most valuable, pivotal moments that I've ever learned about, worrying about, people pleasing other people or needing other people to give you affirmation, or worrying about feeling judged by other people.
Yeah. Man, and to think like, not just trying to get out of it because you had already told, the other cops what happened, but you were just so feared with the attorney to get that shame and carry that, which is wild to think of. But I mean, did you get through that situation just fine? And obviously you didn't have to go 5 years, but were you able to get that in order to where it was no more an issue? Or
yeah, I mean, fortunately, by the grace of God, my attorney ended up going to bat for me. We ended up getting a 5-year deferred. I ended up having to go to rehab for, what is going on? Oh, man, that's okay. Anyway, I ended up having to go to rehab for, Oh man, how long ago to rehab? I went to rehab for 30 days. And that was the first time I ever, it's funny, like with what I do today, it's one of the first experiences, one of the most valuable experiences to where, and looking back on this, you know, one of the most important parts I would want anybody to realize in this episode, like God can take any of your mistakes, any of your imperfections, anything that you've done, any of the shame that you want to hold on to, and he can turn that into your greatest opportunity and greatest vision. Because when I went to rehab for 30 days, we ended up writing it off as I was addicted to pot. And so, you know, I had to go through a program and everything else. There's a whole other story. But whenever I went to rehab, I remember going there and going through these programs. And I remember going through these classes and I was like, dude, this is like the most useless information ever. Because I'm sitting there talking to all these people in rehab. It's like a, you know, state-run rehab, and nobody's taking it seriously. They're just going for the check mark. And I'm like, you know, it's just information. And this is a very valuable thing that I've applied in my entire life, which has kind of led to me where I am today. Information without application is ignorance. Information without application is ignorance. Information with application is intelligence. And so, you know, whenever you sit there and you're learning all of these ideas and you're learning all these concepts in this confined area, and then nobody's like, well, but here's how you do it in the real world. Like, let me actually show you. Let me walk by you. Let me mentor you through it. Then you just get out and then you just fall right back into the exact same stuff. That's what's wrong with our rehab facility. That's wrong with a lot of training in corporate environments. That's what's wrong with society today. That's wrong with the schoolrooms, is the fact that, sure, you can take someone, you can put them on YouTube, or you can give them a book and tell them to read it. But like, if you're not walking beside them and ensuring the fact that they are actually comprehending the information, then literally what you're doing is you're just creating more of an overload to where someone can't even synthesize the information adequately. And so that was one of those big things where I remember from a very young age, I was like, what would it look like if in the world we actually like took time to work on the whole person in rehab? Like, what would a life rehab look like? What would it look like if, you know, one day, you know, you could create these environments to where someone who's gone through hardship can basically get sponsored to go to a life rehab where they learn actual real life skills, like not just business stuff, not just, you know, alcohol, like an actual life overhaul to where mentors could walk by them. And that's, you know, that's really kind of where a lot of my passion has come through with what I'm doing today is, you know, I go into organizations and I tell them, I'm like, man, you know, you can teach your people all the skills you want to. You can teach them every sales trick in the book, and I can teach them that. I'm really good at sales, man. I was one of the best sales guys in the country whenever it came to the nation's largest home improvement company as an outside sales rep. You can teach them all the skills you want to. But if they leave the workplace and they get depressed and they go jump into a bottle and then they show up to work hungover the next day and they do that repeatedly, it doesn't matter how good their skills are. At some point, you're going to end up losing that person. And so you have to focus on the entire person, everything about them, in order to actually produce productive members of society. And with what's going on in AI and what's going on in blockchain technology and what's going on, you know, right now, I mean, between now and 2030, what's going to happen to our reality? Like, we are going to need more and more people to act like people and not robots than ever before in order for, and this sounds daunting, but it's just reality, in order for the human race to survive.
It's deep.
I'm not kidding, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's real. Like, I mean, I just invested in blockchain technology because I believe the future of employment is no longer going to be W-2 contractors. Like, I mean, W-2 employees. It doesn't make sense. Like, you know, from a tax collection standpoint, from a business standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. Even real estate, buying real estate and holding it with a traditional bank and getting a loan from a traditional bank. Why do that whenever you can crowdfund from a bunch of different people? You know, if you can get an AI assistant that can literally go in, now they have AI agents that can go through and do all of these automated white collar tasks that, like, it's going to eliminate, like, decimate 50% of jobs.
Yeah, it's crazy because we use AI in like our business projects because on flips and things like that, and it can run the numbers and give you a rehab budget and all those things, and then you know double check to see, and you're like, yeah, that's pretty spot on. And you know, it's just based off a formula that you uploaded to it. Hey, follow these parameters, give me the synopsis, and then boom, you're like, yeah, that's what I would have came up with anyway. So I can only imagine at various levels, you know, with that integration.
Yeah, it's nuts. And that goes back to the point at hand, which is, you know, the only way that we survive this and the only way that, you know, this can have a positive outcome is if we become more human. And that might sound super weird, but dude, I tell you what, when I go to one of my favorite things, I think I told you this on the podcast, on our podcast, but I just tell everybody the story. And I do it every time now. And I'm doing it more and more because it's remarkable what you learn. Every time I order coffee or every time I go to the store, whatever human interaction I have, I try to be so intentional with that interaction. One of the best tools I've learned to kind of actually connect with a human is just after the transaction's done or during the transaction, just look at the human and just go, hey, what's one thing you learned yesterday? 90% of people, whenever you ask that question, they literally have to stop and go, what was yesterday?
Yeah.
What did I do yesterday? Mm-hmm. Because we're automated. We're robots. We're literally a product of a system. You know, I mean, we can go so many different levels with that, but like, that's how disconnected we are in humanity. Like people that are sitting behind a cash register are used to people just walking up over and over and over and over again all day, just being order takers. Like that's not humanity.
Yeah, and they freeze when you ask them that because they're like, "Oh, a real moment."
It's a real human, like, dude, 45 to 60% of Americans don't believe that if they had a life-changing situation and they needed to call someone for help, that many people don't think that there's someone that would actually help them. Like that's how disconnected we are as a society. And we are by far the most wealthy, prosperous, at the most wealthy, prosperous time in human history. And we're the most broken and disconnected. And so the reason I'm really passionate about what I do at Solving Why and why, like, you know, I wrote my book and why I try to live that intentionally every day is because it's like, I realized at one point, like, I had a guy on my podcast and he has a nonprofit, worldwide nonprofit, and he's on the United Nations, the United States division of the United Nations. And he was talking about like, you know, when you notice injustice in the world, whenever you notice a problem, you know, there's a gap there. Mm. And at some point, someone has to step into the gap. And I think in humanity, what we've run into is more and more, we're just like, well, someone else will do it. Well, someone else will take care of the problem. Well, someone else will step up to the plate. Well, what if there's nobody else? What if you are the one that's supposed to do it?
Yeah, 100%.
And so that's what goes back to the way that we started this, which is like, you know, fighting that victim mentality, not allowing yourself to fall into this mindset of, well, someone else will just do it. You know, I mean, you do rehabs all the time, right? Mm-hmm. You know, what would happen if you went and bought a rehab and just expected for someone to show up and do the rehab for you?
Right. No, you have to put stuff in place.
Yeah.
You have to put in the action. It's not just going to happen.
Yeah.
When you say people need to be more human, I know you've told me that exercise with when you order coffee, and I think that's beautiful because I've since put my own spin on those type of interactions as well, and it's remarkable what people say. What are some aspects that are needed for people to do to be more human in this day and age where AI and all those things are at play?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I see is the fact that we are in a dopamine, we're in an excessive dopamine intake. So whenever it comes to dopamine, like your feel-good hormones, right? Those can be activated whenever it comes to staring at your screen. Mm-hmm. They can be activated whenever it comes to watching different explicit content. They can be activated in a bunch of different ways that humans weren't necessarily created to have those level of dopamine hits, right?
Gotcha.
So you get so high on this dopamine that you have to maintain it. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in life and one of the most valuable tools I've ever learned is journaling. So there's a lot of scientific research behind this too. And I tell everybody, like, it's funny, my buddies will joke with me. You know, they call me in a crisis because I'm everybody's catch-all for crises now. And yeah. I'm like, y'all do know this is what I do for a living, but I'm fine with it, man. I don't care. Like, you know, hope is my purpose. So like, if I'm inspiring hope, like, I don't care. Money does not matter to me. Money's fake. It's not even real. It's a fiat currency. Money is literally fake. Like, it's not real. It's a manifestation of value that we've all agreed to. But, you know, when they call me or someone calls me in crisis, the first thing I say is, well, have you journaled about this? The reason I love journaling so much, and it's a really good starting point, and I'm not talking about typing, I'm talking about journaling by hand, is there was research done in 2023 by the University of Science and Technology in Norway. And they took a control group, 50% of 70 students, and had 50% of them, I believe it was 70, but I know 50% of the students wrote or typed whenever it came to their notes. The other 50% had to write stylus to screen or actual pen to paper. So the remarkable thing about this study that really kind of shows why journaling is so important and why it can really bring you back to the present and ground you and really connect you to your very archaic emotions that are developed at a young age is because that group that just typed only engaged a few different areas of their brain, of their mind. And that's like motor function, like your prefrontal cortex, like your executive decision making, because it's like a very conscious like action, right? It's very like you learn computer stuff later on in life. At least we did growing up. But not really anything emotionally, right? But you got a lot of dopamine, but that there's that group. The other group that are right by stylus, they engaged 5 other areas of their brain. Most importantly, the area connected to the amygdala, which is your emotional processor. Not only did they test better, they engaged more areas of their brain. What that tells us is that whenever you write, number one, you have to slow down.
Yeah.
You're forced to slow down. If there's the one thing we have to do as a society, we got to just slow down. We're so fast, dude. What are you in a hurry for? What, you're just running to the finish line to die? Like, we're all gonna, you might die today, you might die tomorrow. Why not slow down and at least savor what you have?
Yep. Oh, I agree.
And so, and you know, there's a lot of reasons of why we're locked into this unhealthy automation is what I call it. It's easier to manipulate you. So one of the best things you can do is just start journaling. Just start getting your thoughts down on paper. Just start creating a dialogue with yourself to understand who you are and what you do. You know, so when you write based off of that study, what you're going to start doing is you're going to start understanding more things about yourself. You're going to actually start recognizing patterns in yourself. You're actually going to be able to go back to that page, and that's truth. That's what you thought at one point. We only remember 50% of the past accurately based off of multiple studies. Only 50%. And as you get older, you remember it less and less. So our accuracy, like the story that I told you earlier, whenever it came to, you know, my attorney and all of that, I am the first to admit to you that that's probably like 50 to 70% accurate because that happened when I was 20 years old.
Yeah, and over time it just decreased.
So I try to give summaries of stories so that I'm not caught up in the details because I know that I don't remember those. But since I've been journaling more and more consistently, it allows me to actually slow down. It makes me be conscious. It taps into the reason that writing is so important is one of the first things we learn as kids. We learn letters, right? We learn sounds. We learn how to scribble. I mean, shoot, look at hieroglyphs. That was one of the earliest forms of the way that humans communicated. So this is a generational thing that, I mean, there's research coming out now whenever it comes to trauma, whenever it comes to disease. A lot of that is based off of genetics that have been passed down for generations and generations and generations. Right. Same thing in a lot of areas. And so when you sit down and you have to write out that letter, whenever you have to think through and process that, it taps into that archaic version of yourself, that 5-year-old child that just started learning, that 3-year-old child. It engages just those deepest parts of your emotion so that you can actually start, emotionally regulating yourself through just slowing down and just practicing being present. Mm-hmm. And it's remarkable whenever people start doing this, and I tell them this, I'm like, man, if you're feeling like you're stressed out or you're overreacting or you're mad at your wife or you're mad at your business partner or if you're mad at your boss, sit down and write it out. Just be vulnerable and honest. I want you to walk away from it for 10 minutes, go do push-ups, go do crunches, go do something. And then I want you to come back and I want you to read it 10 minutes later and tell me how you feel. 90% of the time, people are like, I can't believe I thought that. Because we go into this high cortisol state of stress whenever we get overwhelmed. And so, it's a great tool to combat many different things, but that would be the first. It's a very valuable tool that everybody should engage in.
And it's like, it's not a small task because, it would take commitment to doing it.
It's intentionality. Yeah.
It's intentional, but it has so many facets. That's the part that's impressive about it. Because not only are you documenting your life, which is a benefit in itself because you can look back on it and have more accurate recollection of it, but it is that truth in that moment. So whether you do have an argument with someone or a bad thought, if you do a journal or go for a walk or do one of those moments to slow you down, then you can use your rational brain a little better and you're not just reacting. So it's nice to know that it can help you in multiple areas. And most importantly, it helps you grow.
Mm.
I really thought it was nice that it's holding yourself accountable, because you and I are high performers. We do a lot of things. It would be important to have those moments to look back on. Also, like, not only for growth, but maybe for something you're struggling on. Like, dang, I've been struggling on this for X amount of time. What actions am I taking that aren't, changing this situation? So I think it's nice that it does go back to simpler things. Slow down, write in your journal. That type of stuff is huge, because we do want to just wake up, go do our job that we need to do, satisfy ourselves until we go to sleep, and then move on to the next day. So I think journaling could help people at various levels too. I think it's something I've lacked on, but anytime I do write things out, it can just help you process. When you said tapping into that emotional, I wonder if it like makes you slow down enough to feel it more. I don't know.
We're basically computers, right? So, the base of everything is energy. Period. Okay, like our conversation, like everything. The base of it is literally energy. So if the base of everything is energy, 11%, I'm sorry. So the base of everything is energy. If the base of everything is energy, then, we are not that physical, okay? So everything has to be done with intention. So whenever you're journaling, and whenever you are forcing yourself to intentionally slow down and process through information, journaling forces you just based off, I can do this a lot faster than I can do this.
And I've been in that moment where my brain had to slow down to like write something out, whether you're doing a to-do list or your thoughts for the day or what you got to do tomorrow. Those things, like, it takes a moment. You're like, oh, okay, I can't just like text on your iPhone without looking. It's not the same. You got to take a second.
Yeah. And so it forces you to slow down. The other thing it does, and this was actually some fascinating research done by the University of Sussex. They were, this is why I tell people, after you write it down, especially if you're mad, like if you're mad at your boss, or you're upset with your wife, or you're upset with your girlfriend, or you're upset with, your kid, instead of reacting, just be brutally honest with that piece of paper. Here's exactly how I feel. It doesn't matter how ugly it is. Then walk away from it. The reason I tell people to return to it is because whenever you're in that emotional reaction state, your cortisol levels are very high. You have high blood pressure. That's why high performers, a lot of them, like you'll see people just drop dead from heart attacks, and like you don't understand why. Well, it's because they're living in a high cortisol environment, and all the worst things, cancer. Dude, we can get into Alzheimer's and dementia and the rise of that. It's insane what's going on right now, and people in their mid 40s to late 50s are starting to come down with like cognitive disabilities, because they have so much stress and they're trying to process information at such a rapid pace, and we weren't made for that. And so, whenever you, write it down and then you walk back and read it, this study by the University of Sussex shows us that reading reduces your stress by 68%.
Damn.
68%. So what you're doing, and this is the beauty in this whole exercise, you're writing down how you feel, you're walking away from it, so you're giving yourself space. The reason I tell people to go do push-ups or crunches or something is because you're going to exert that energy, get that adrenaline out. You're going to return, and then you're going to read through and process what you wrote, which is actually going to then lower your cortisol levels, so then you can actually make an accurate decision.
Right.
It forces you to slow down versus just react. And it is an action, though. So a lot of people look at like writing or slowing down as like, well, I'm not doing anything. That's not true. It's an intentional action. It is still moving forward. It's just moving forward in a pattern that's different than how we've been trained to move. Because if you intentionally start transforming your life, if you intentionally start capturing your thoughts, if you intentionally start living a purpose-driven life, you then cannot be controlled and manipulated, because you're not moving at the same frequency of everybody else around you.
Yeah.
And that's the only way, as funny as it sounds, like that's the only way you break out of the matrix.
Yeah.
Because we are literally living in a world of robots.
Yeah, it's crazy when you have interactions with people and you can tell they're just on that frequency.
Yeah.
You're like, you're not even here.
Yep.
Or like when you ask them what they learned yesterday, like, it's pretty crazy. Like some of the stuff you see, and you'll even see people like going through like the grocery store in just zombie mode.
Yep.
And you're like, wow. But then they're shocked when you say like, the little things that meant something that day that they may just pass over. So I think the journaling is awesome because we're talking about it from a state of helping people through a situation.
Yeah.
Which, whether you are having an argument or you're having a tough time, that's beautiful for that. But also relishing the positivity, going back to what else you push. Think of reading back on the good times and the stuff you were doing to make those good times prosper. And you're checking back in and you're like, yeah, when I do X, Y, and Z happens. Okay, I'm going to lean more into these actions that fulfill me instead of just sustain me with the dopamine and then I move on to the next day. So it's important because it could be something so little that you may miss. And then if you take a second and feel it, you kind of feel bad for yourself of like ever thinking like that wasn't important. Like whether it's just putting your feet in the grass or me and you having 5 or 10 minutes before we start doing the podcast and just get to talk while we're making coffee. Those moments are so lost that you don't know how much you need them inside. And I think the journaling is cool that it can just not be one thing. Like, yes, it is writing it down, but you're talking about it helping relationships, business, yourself. It's just like the best investment you can make in yourself. What are some other practices you like to implement with people?
So there's 2 things we're going to do on this. Actually, I'm going to give you a test here in a minute, which is really interesting. I've given this to hundreds of people. Did I send you the 8 questions?
I don't know.
Okay, good. I'm gonna give you this exam because
I memorized them. No.
You said something earlier that's very, very important that everybody needs to understand. It's the word simple.
Yep.
You know, we complicate everything. I love ChatGPT. It's a great tool. It's AI is amazing. The problem you run into is that we start then assuming that we know everything. And if you can't apply it, you don't understand how to apply it, you don't understand where it applies, it just becomes more information, which then confuses you more.
Yep.
And so there's 4 steps to breaking through mental barriers that I teach everybody whenever it comes to my class. I've got a purpose module that's 4 steps that has really transformed a lot of people's lives, man. It's crazy because like I actually, the whole vision for it came to me after like the most broken year of my life, doing a lot of clinical research. Like, I'm not a doctor, man. Like, I've flunked out of college. I have 1 good semester of college. Like, everything that I know is self-taught and from God. Like, I'm not kidding, you know, and I have conversations with doctor level, like PhDs, doctors, but that's because I'm truly impassioned about what I do because I think we're tilting on the edge of humanity becoming something that we don't want it to become. And so I take it very, very seriously, you know, what I do for a living. But whenever it comes to breaking through mental barriers, you know, there's that first step of journaling. So the first thing I would tell anybody whenever it comes to, you know, this part in my training, which is the second part, which is mind, body, spirit, is whenever you're trying to break through mental barriers, the first thing is journaling. So it's the first thing you can do. After you start journaling and you start building like these narratives, right? What you're going to start seeing, if you're intentional about it, is you're going to see reoccurring patterns. You're going to see, you know, it's going to be, you know, areas of lack. You're going to be, you know, you're going to be reacting when money comes into play. You're going to be reacting in a relationship. You're going to be reacting with kids. You're going to be reacting in business certain ways. Whatever those common frustrations are that you start seeing. And this is where AI can be very helpful. What you want to do is you want to start analyzing those things. Go back and read your notes. And then once you recognize a pattern, go find a book that someone else that you don't know has written on whatever the common theme is that you're struggling with.
Right.
What that does is there was in the 1970s, I think it was 1978, there was a couple psychologists that came up with the term theory of mind. TOM, theory of mind. And that is your ability to empathize with another human being's perspective. What happens whenever you go read a book and why it reduces stress is because it allows you to view the world through someone else's lens. The reason I love books and wwhy, you know, last year I read 40 books. This year I'm going to read...
the first time you did something at that amount?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I wish I had read 20. I should have read 20 because reading 40, like, it was too much information. I didn't apply it. This year I'm only reading 20, but I'm applying information from each book.
Yeah, that intelligence, not the ignorance.
That's exactly correct. Because information is just information if you're not going to apply it in some capacity, and then it just becomes an overachiever thing. Well, I have to read more, and then you're not learning anything.
No, you're not absorbing anything, applying nothing.
Yeah, there's no synthesization. So you know, that second tier after journaling is you're reading something to get someone else's perspective that you don't know. Mm-hmm. They can't show nepotism towards you. They can't tell you what you want to hear. They can't project into your life because I say this very seriously. I don't take things personally anymore. I do not take things personally. You can tell me that I am whatever you want to my face. I don't care. You know why I don't care? You're just projecting. You're projecting something into my life. And if it's not true, if there's truth to it and I've invited you in to give me critiques, it's one thing. But if you're saying something to me that I know is an untruth, I'm not going to take it personally. Mm-hmm. Because you're just projecting an inadequacy towards me that you have within. So I just don't take things personally anymore.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, my wife reads these spiritual books, and I've read some of them with her as well. And that was one of the overarching themes was don't take things personally. Everyone's in their own world.
Yeah, exactly.
And once you take some of those little pieces out, then even if you have a moment where someone's projecting, you can shake that off and then probably break their guard.
Yep.
And then it's back to normal.
Well, what happens is that, and this is why reading is so important, you know, you journal to get a better understanding of yourself. You start reading to gain other perspectives so you can understand what someone else's perspective is outside of your direct sphere of reality, right? Because we all construct our own reality in some capacity. Like I'm choosing to be here. We have a conjoined reality in some regards, but that's going to be based off of how much proximity we have with each other, right? Mm-hmm. So like, we're choosing to have a shared reality. But whenever you engage in a book and you start reading through someone else's lens, like you're really seeing a different perspective, a different reality that you really don't partake in. Right. And so whenever you choose to engage in that and they have a common thread with whatever you're struggling with, you start saying, okay, well, I'm not the only one. It helps you realize, well, I'm not the only one that struggles with this. Mm-hmm. So therefore, then you unisolate yourself because we're really good at, especially overperformers, we're really good at isolating ourselves and we have to figure it all out. Once you start going to books, you start going to other resources, you listen to podcasts, you start realizing that you're not alone. Once that happens, and once you have this reality, this concept of the fact that, okay, here's my struggle. I know that I need to deal with this. Oh, here's someone else in a book that I don't know this person. I've never met him before, but they're saying the same stuff. Okay, that means I'm not alone. Then, at that point, you want to start sharing with other people what you're going through. Why in that stage? Well, if you just go to someone and you haven't worked on yourself and you start sharing with them what they're going through, they're going to project into you what they feel like you need to hear and what makes them feel the best about themselves. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that might not always be the best advice. If you have a basis of understanding who you are, what you're struggling with, you go read a book, an unsolicited book, or a couple of different books about what you're struggling with. Then you engage in conversation. Then you have multiple sources plus your own inner dialogue that can basically then start interacting with another human being. And that's what we have to do is start interacting with other human beings because when you do that, you start creating oxytocin. Well, oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's the hormone that it's what we need. It makes us feel wanted. It's what community actually bonds us together in. And it ends up actually reducing those cortisol levels. So you were talking earlier, whenever it came to, you're sitting with someone and they're projecting at you and then you choose not to engage with that projection or react to their action. If you are truly at peace and you maintain a curious frame in life, like just true curiosity, you're just like, why would you say that? What are you going through? What's the purpose of this? And you maintain very present. Mm-hmm. If they are projecting with a cortisol-based thing and you are in a curious state, you are going to be creating oxytocin. You are going to be creating this feel-good hormone. And if they're just projecting at you and they don't get a reaction, it will then force them to have to go into an inner dialogue of, oh, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. So it breaks that unhealthy automation, which is what I'm all about. How do we break these unhealthy automated cycles so that we can create humanity? Like, how do we create community, which is what everybody's yearning for? And so when you look at those 3 steps, if you can adopt those things in your life consistently, anytime you run into a challenge, you go write about it, build a dialogue with yourself, go read a book related to whatever subject you're dealing with, and then you start finding people that can relate to what you're going through. You start sharing those things. That's how you build community, and that's how you start breaking out of these isolated or depressive states.
Mm-hmm. And you just not only breaking out of them, but creating barriers to where it's harder to go back to.
Bingo.
Instead of just quick fix, a Band-Aid, and then it's easy to fall back into your old habits. This is creating like true resilience.
You're creating new neural pathways. That's exactly right. And after you're 28 as a male, 26 as a female, your neuroelasticity, your neuroplasticity, the ability for your brain to be able to reformulate becomes more and more difficult because you're getting older. Like you're getting more age. It's the same thing as like a tree that ends up becoming fossilized, right? Over the years, it gets harder and harder and harder. A diamond. Like everything over time becomes more and more solidified if you consistently choose that neural pathway. And so in order to break those neural pathways as you get older, it takes a lot of intentionality to break through to create those new healthy pathways. So you nailed it on the head, Zach. Like that's what the goal is to you start doing these habits so that you can do breakthroughs, but it takes a lot of intentionality to change. And I'm just going to call a spade a spade. Most people just don't want to change.
Yeah, because it's easy just to like do one moment and then count that as like the fix.
That's not change.
I did this, I'm good now.
Yeah.
I did this, I'm good now. But it starts within, of course, with the journaling and then education and then application. And I think that there's something or a handful of things in all of us, myself, yourself, people listening, that they would want to fix. And I think those are beautiful ways to get it done in a healthy manner with longevity. I think that's the biggest thing. You don't want to fall back to it. So just put in the work up front to make it last. It's like, in a joking way, it's like someone that was like lifting or someone that did like all these steroids or something. Like the person that's just always lifting and consistent is going to be solidified for a long period of time versus someone that's taking like the shortcuts. And then it's going to reoccur. I bet you've seen some remarkable improvements in people. And it comes from a business mindset in some ways for you, but I'm sure it's just so people related. Once you see the growth they've done in their personal life that's transitioning to the business life as well, that's making them just live a better life. I mean, that's why you saying the passion for it's not a surprise.
Yeah, so whenever it comes to working with people, it's extremely rewarding. I remember whenever I first launched Solving Why, I was terribly intimidated because it's something that I had never done before. Like I'd never actually taught classes. Like I've been an entrepreneur for I waited tables and bartended my entire life. I look at that as entrepreneurship, for goodness sake. You're making $2.13 an hour. Yeah. Like it's on you if you want to make money or not. Yeah. 100%. You learn a lot about human psychology and stuff. So I did that. I worked at nightclubs. Like I did that for a long time, which was extremely enjoyable. But, so I did that. I ran a company for 8 years. It was 3 different verticals. We grew a carpet cleaning and restoration division. We did a pest control division and a decorative concrete division. So I ran all those. And then I did outside sales for the nation's largest home improvement company as an outside contractor, became their, best contractor in the country, statistically wise. I had a woodworking company that I grew that became very profitable. So I've done a lot of things. I've never done professional training, like going into a company and saying, I knew how to do it. I knew how to formulate things. I knew how to do sales. So doing the first class was extremely intimidating because I went into an organization that, they were struggling whenever it came to culture. I remember whenever I first went in there and started working with this company, I actually went in to do just contracting work for them, outside sales. I remember you go in on a Monday and people would be cracking beers at noon and guys would be talking about, doing drugs in the back bathroom. And like, I was like, dude, this is a dumpster fire. But I remember like going in there and looking at it and really just going like, I was kind of asking God, I was like, why in the world am I here? Like, what in the world am I doing here? This is way out of my, way out of my realm of who I am as a person and who I'm becoming. And I remember at the end of that year, I did a 72-hour water fast and I was picking my word for the year. And the word for 2024 was selfless. 2023 was curiosity. That was my word for the year. And then 2024 was selfless. And I was like, man, well, what in the world would that look like? And that was December of 2023 whenever I picked that word. And then in January, I start just kind of all this information I'd learned in 23. I just started writing it out. And I just, kind of saying, like, why do people do this? Like, why do they torture themselves? Like, why are organizations so profit driven? Why can't people find help? Like, what? And I started looking at this and I apply first principles thinking, which is the why behind the why behind the why. And, I just started writing this syllabus. And as I started writing the syllabus, I start the whole thing, the entire training with 8 questions. 8 questions is the way that I start my purpose module. And I went into this company. I went to my buddy that owned the company. I was like, man, I know you need help in some areas. I'm going to give you a real outside of the box idea. Why don't I go in and I'll do a 4-session course? Like I just created this session, these 4 sessions. I've never done it before. And I was like, why don't I go create this and I'll train it to your people and we'll see if it works or not. And I'm like, I'll charge you a minimal amount. Here's how much I think is fair per session. And nothing else. Like I'll help him with sales. And he was like, all right, cool. So, he offers it, says, hey guys, if you want to go, you can go. You don't have to. It's not mandatory, but you can show up to these things. So we did the 4 sessions. We did every other week. And, on the 3rd session, we start talking about some different tools you can use, like a TVI, time value index, where you track all of your time for 30 days and figure out where your time's allotted. Things like habit stacking, things like journaling, reading. We had gone through all that. And we rolled into the 4th session. And on the 4th session, everybody gets an opportunity to basically state their why. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the first guy that stands up, and these are guys that all work together, that all party together. First guy that stands up in front of everybody. And, the whole premise of this class is you're having very deep, intimate conversations about challenges you have. Like outside, we're not talking about work at all. There's no work related anything. It's all just like personal life stuff. So it's a bunch of guys, some girls were in there as well. And the first guy stands up and he says his why. And part of it is like you talk about, where you came from and the broken, like false narrative you had your whole life before discovering what you feel like your true narrative was. And he stands up in class. He's like, man, he tells everybody, he's like, before I started this class, I was thinking about killing myself. And he was like, coming into this class and hearing all of you people talk about the struggles you've had, talk about the challenges you've had, talk about what y'all have gone through saved my life.
That community.
And I was like, yeah, dude. And I'm sitting there, and this isn't a rowdy group of salespeople, right?
Yeah, they were cracking beers.
And everybody's like sitting there just in shock. And the crazy thing about that is we didn't concentrate on sales at all. The guys that were in that class, about at least half of them, some of them fell off. Half those guys became the top performers or grew the most statistically in that company over the next 12 months.
It's going back to everything we're saying.
Yeah, because
the other areas of your life that'll improve.
And so that, whenever I saw it in that first class, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Period. End of story. And the platform has grown and grown. It's now a crazy big vision where I want to have 14 retreat locations worldwide over the next 10 years that you can pair mentors and mentees from all over the world that can work together, especially whenever it comes to the retiring class, the baby boomers, because they're retiring and they're dying in like 10 years because they have no purpose. So pairing them up with purpose, technology to mentor younger business people worldwide is kind of a passion that I have.
But how awesome, not to cut you off, but how awesome for you to get that reassurance.
Yeah.
God put you on this mission and then you get to apply it with minimal risk because it's something you created, but you have someone on board.
Yeah.
And then you get to see it work.
Yeah.
Like, that's when you know you're on the right path.
Yeah.
When there's less stuff yanking you away from it and more stuff kind of falling into place from your action. So that's beautiful for you to be able to get it early.
Yeah. It's great. Do you have a piece of paper?
Yeah.
There's a piece of paper and pen. I'm going to give you a test.
Cool.
This is the 8-question test. So I give this to everybody. I've sent this to hundreds of people. I've sent this to CEOs. I've sent it to entrepreneurs. I've sent it to dishwashers. I've sent it to a bunch of people. And this is the test that I give to everybody before we start. And so I'm not going to give you the same amount of time, but we're going to go through this. And I'm very curious to see what your answers are. So the rules are very basic. Okay. This isn't the start of every single one of my books, by the way. I added it in here.
Just say the name of your book.
So the book's Thought for 31. It's a 31-day guide to break unhealthy automation through scripture and science.
Let's go.
So
Congrats,
it's 30.
By the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Never thought I'd publish a book. It took me 2 years of imposter syndrome to actually pull the trigger.
Yeah, right.
So I
already know.
Yeah, dude. I kept on just going, nobody's going to read it, nobody's going to read it, nobody's going to read it. And then one day, like, why not? Mm-hmm. I lived my entire life, man. Zach, like so many of us live in a world of what ifs.
Yep.
What if? Mm-hmm. What if I had done this? What if I did this? What if you just stopped and you just said, what now? What if you lived in a world of what now? What would your reality look like?
Yeah, there'd be way less regrets.
Yeah, dude.
Do the what now.
Yeah, but you must understand the what ifs to say what now. So you have to compartmentalize those and turn the what ifs into, well, what do I do with those what ifs now? Mm-hmm. So it's that transition of like taking that purpose and taking all of those inadequacies, all of that shame, all that guilt, and then turning it into something beautiful. Yep. And every single person has the capability to do that, but it takes a lot of intentionality, and there's want, there's need, and there's desire. A lot of people want to change their circumstances. Mm-hmm. Some people need to. Not a lot of people genuinely desire to change their circumstances because it takes a life transformation. So desire is the emotional connection between need and want to where you actually, like, you desire for this to happen so deeply that you start manifesting in your life because you take actions towards what that desire is. But most people, their desire is safety. Mm-hmm. Their desire is staying in that comfort zone. Like, that's their desire. You don't actually desire growth. If you say, I want growth, but you're not doing it, you don't actually desire it. If you're saying, well, I need to change, but you don't desire it. It's the combination of the need and the want that create the desire. Mm-hmm. And most people don't have a desire to change, unfortunately.
That's why we have you.
Dude, God does a lot. So this test. So I've given this. Okay, so here's the rules. It's very basic. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can do this test at home. It's very simple. If you want a link, I've got a walkthrough that we can post as well. So it's 8 questions, and you will be graded after the test.
Oh, dang, some pressure.
Yeah. So here's the rules. It's very simple. It's 8 questions. Mm-hmm. What you have to do is I want you to write out the question by hand that I tell you, and then you have to answer it with one word.
Okay.
So you write out the question, and then you answer the question with one word. Now, typically, I would give someone 5 minutes to go through this, but I'm just going to walk through it with you, and we're just going to go 1, you're going to write it out, and then write out your answer. Mm-hmm. 2, write out your answer, and then after we're done, we're going to review your answers. Now, the exception for the rule is question number 8, where you're going to write out one word for each section of the question.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right, so the 8 questions. Question number 1, who are you?
And then answer with one
word.
One word. I can't spell the best, but you get it.
Number 2, what do you do? Number 3 is, what is your purpose? Number 4 is, what do others think about you?
Interesting question.
One word. Okay. 5, what do you admire the most? Six, what is your life goal?
Trying to put it into one word. Those two the same. Okay.
Why are you here today?
Like in this room? Or just
however you want to answer it.
Okay.
List 5 things you're grateful for, 1 word each. All right.
Cool. Hand it to the boss.
So let's go through it. You read it to me.
All right. So who are you? I put adventurer.
Okay, number 2.
What do you do? Live.
Number 3.
What is your purpose? Peace.
Number 4.
What do others think about you? Caring.
Number 5.
What do you admire the most? Love.
6.
What is your life goal? Peacefulness.
7.
Why are you here today? Intentionality.
And then the 5 things you're grateful for.
Health, love, adventure, confidence, and family.
Which one did you struggle with the most?
Why are you here today? Oh, what is your life goal? I would say, what is your life goal? Putting it into 1 word. Because I don't look for the word complete, because I know you learn and live every day. But when I hit that last chapter or that last moment, I think of what my grandpa said. I lived a good life before he went. And that's kind of the peacefulness I think of. So putting it into 1 word. But just know I did it my way. Peaceful.
You said something interesting whenever it was, what do others think about you?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because it's kind of funny to say your perspective of how other people view you. Because then it's what you think they think of you.
Bingo.
So I thought that was interesting to ask.
Yeah. Most people, and these questions, the great news is that you get 100% because there's no right answer.
Right.
And I've given this test out hundreds of times. And even though like maybe every once in a while there's words that are used that are common, never once is it the same.
Yeah. It's hard to. With the 1 word, I think that helps the focus and the like blocking out the noise. Like, don't give me a roundabout description. Just give me a feeling.
It's simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's not complicated. It makes it to where it can be singular. Now, the goal of this, and is really, really interesting, is if you take all these words with the question and you put them into Chat GPT and you tell it to synthesize all of your answers into 1 word and then ask it what the opposite of that word is, it normally reveals something very interesting.
Okay. Are we about to do it?
I think we should.
Oh, okay. I was like, shoot, I don't know. All right, let's do it real quick.
So we're going to do this. So if I go into chat, now typically I tell people if you're going to do this the right way, you go through the 4 sessions, and during the 4 sessions you revisit them and slowly you start consolidating every single answer and see if you can find commonalities. And so you revisit it weekly and journal about it and you write out, why did I answer it that way? Because that's really the core of this entire thing. It's like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why peace?
Yeah.
Why curiosity? Why caring? Like, why?
Yeah, definitely was
like, why those things?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you answer it that way? Like, did that just happen by chance? No, of course it didn't.
Right.
But so many times, we want to answer with so many questions. Like, what do you do? What do most people answer whenever it's their job? Mm-hmm. Automatically, you go to a mixer. What do you do? Well, I'm in real estate. Why? Why do we answer that way? Why is that the first thing that we feel like is so freaking important in this world? Well, but that's because that's what society ranks us as.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said at the beginning where it's like, you want to put this perfect persona. Anytime I meet someone and they give me some elaborate answer of what they do, I'm like, okay, but like, who are you again? Like, tell me you so I can know you. And it's just kind of a negative in our society of like, what do you do? How much do you make? What do you do for me? It's like, what's going on? But thank you for doing this part. This is fun.
So we're going to do this. So analyze these questions. So what I'm typing into ChatGPT is I want you to analyze these questions for my client, Zach. Do not use the information you have about me to influence these answers. So the reason I'm doing this is because if y'all use ChatGPT and you don't know this, ChatGPT actually will build a profile of you based off of all the information you've given it. So whenever you're going in to do this, for me personally, because I'm putting this into my ChatGPT, I have to tell it to make sure that it doesn't use any bias based off of what it knows about me for these.
Right.
So the number one was, influence these answers. I want you to synthesize these answers into one word, and then I want you to give me the opposite or negative to that word. Are you doing it in chat too?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Turning this off.
So we're going to put number one.
Oh, shit.
Who are you? And it is adventure. Okay. Number two. What do you do? So how was that for you, by the way, while I enter these?
Fun.
Was it interesting trying to synthesize everything down to one word?
Interesting. But I think since that's how I've tried to wire my brain and how I'm trying to live my life, it's helpful to be precise on those moments. Because you don't need all the fluff. You don't need to give a ton of answers to answer the question. And I think sometimes simple is even better.
I agree with you.
And I think if you would have done this exercise with me years ago, I wouldn't have had the confidence in myself or like the ownership of how I feel to want to answer them. I would have wanted to answer them so you couldn't judge me, like you're talking about with the attorney, you know. But when you asked me, I was like, yeah, I just want to answer them to me. So.
Yeah, and that's what's so interesting is whenever you do this by yourself and you start journaling and dialoguing, you know, so many times we want to say the answer that the other person, that we think the person on the other side of the table wants to hear.
Yep.
And so it's really interesting whenever you do this. The reason I make people write this down and not tell them they're going to share it is because I want them to process through it and be honest with themselves. Yep. I don't want them to give me a fake answer or say what the right thing is. I want them to question why they're doing it that way. And so, you know, all of these are based off of Bloom's taxonomy of verbs, to where each one builds on the other, but it throws you such a mixture of concepts that are all very similar that it makes you really question yourself and your intent. Mm-hmm. So the whole purpose of this is to break and engage. Like, you know, we were talking earlier about journaling. One of the first things you learn are letters and words. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're having to consolidate your purpose, your what do you do down to one word, it forces you to start thinking like a child. Like I've had multiple clients when I'm bringing them through this exercise, they go, man, for some reason, I just started envisioning like career day whenever I was a little kid for some reason. And like, what did I want to, the thought of like, what do I want to do when I grow up? Like it brought them to that place because they haven't thought in those simple terms for such a long time.
Well, I'm thankful you wanted to do this. This is nice for me too.
Yeah.
That one-on-one.
Dude, my pleasure. It's my purpose, man.
Seriously.
So I'm almost done. Thank you for your patience for anybody who's on here.
Man, so like, it's funny though. I think it's a little introspective to know like how panicky I would have felt trying to answer these questions for you years ago. Not saying I'm at this point where I've made it, but at least I'm at a point where I would like want to be honest with myself. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it would have been so easy to panic and want to answer them a certain way if you would have met me at a different chapter, which is similar to your story about like how we've evolved through our chapters.
Oh, it's remarkable to me. So chat synthesized it, and the word that it gave us was wholeness.
Wholeness?
Wholeness.
Wholeness.
This word encapsulates Zach's desire for peace, love, intentionality, adventure, and connection. Wholeness suggests a fully integrated life emotionally, spiritually, and relationally, where living, caring, and being are all aligned in purpose and gratitude.
Sounds pretty good to me.
So here's the opposite, fragmentation.
Fragmentation.
This word reflects the breakdown of peace, love, identity, and purpose, a life that feels scattered, disconnected, or incomplete, where wholeness suggests harmony and unity. Fragmentation reflects chaos, disconnection, or emotional unrest. How does that resonate with your past?
This word reflects the breakdown of peace, love, identity, and purpose, a life that feels scattered, disconnected, or incomplete. You know, it's funny because I grew up with a lot of love, like you were saying, similar to your story,
Mm-hmm.
but the scatteredness in the two households and the walking on eggshells and just all those things. It's funny because sometimes my wife and I will think if we're like, you know, when you get the feeling when you're like in a peaceful state, like, oh, I need to do something. You're like, oh, no, I've actually like finally been feeling this for the first time. So it's funny because that's exact, like, you know, you come from love, but there's a lot of brokenness and chaos. And once you hone that in and create your own life, your own perspective, it's pretty obvious it's going to be the opposite of what you didn't like growing up. But I think it's nice to see, if anything. And honestly, what it gives me, if you're like, give me one word of how it makes you feel, it'd probably be motivated. It gives me a lot of motivation that the steps I'm taking and the things I'm doing are moving me in the right direction versus the wrong direction, because then I'd be more on the fragmented side instead of like the wholeness side. I want you to sign this too.
Yeah, dude.
Since you gave it to me. Cool.
Now, how do you feel like whenever it comes to the word wholeness? Like, how does that make you feel? Like, what would it look like to live a life that all you did was focused on being whole?
My brain goes to, being honest in your situations, doing your best, being okay with the outcome, good or bad, because, you did your part. Business-wise, it would make me think, give everybody your all. In my personal life, it would be make sure you're helping in multiple areas, whether it's for yourself or your significant other or your family or your friends or something like that. Don't just help in one area. Try to be whole.
Yeah.
That's where my brain goes to. Maybe from a vulnerable state for me, maybe not focusing on just the good I'm doing, but make sure to realize the bad I'm doing so that I can correct those over time to where it fits that wholeness. Because if there's 10 things and you're doing 7 of them great and 3 of them really bad, the 3 bad are still going to compound over time. So my brain goes to that completeness and maybe consistency. What else? I think it goes to honesty, consistency, and that, like, those together would equal the wholesome. Because you're consistent, you're honest, and maybe a word for satisfied but not content. I used to say like content without complacency. So like gratefulness. So maybe gratitude mixed in there as well to mix that whole. Because like I said, putting your feet in the grass, like those moments you take a second, make the bad times not seem as hard. And maybe you'll lean more into fixing those bad times because you've recharged your battery so much with the good. I don't know if that answers it right.
It's the answer is what it's supposed to be. That's the beauty, and this is what I've realized whenever it comes to life, is like each person is literally uniquely and wonderfully made. And most of us just live to die. We don't live to live. And so at some point in life, every human has to come to the realization of the fact that you do have purpose. And I think sometimes it's very easy in life to complicate that purpose. It's easy to, want to be the title and want to do this and want to do that. But like, I told you at the start of this podcast that, growing up, I was hopeless, right? I lived a life of hopelessness, which dragged me into a lot of unhealthy relationships, a lot of unhealthy decisions. I've partied, I've made money, I've broken the rules, I've gone to jail. Like I've done it, man. And it was a very hopeless life. And so I've taken all that and, now I've consolidated it down to like my answer to all 8 of those questions is the exact same answer. It's hope. It's just hope. It's very simple. So how do I do that? Right? My why is hope. I share stories of seemingly insurmountable circumstances in my own life to allow Christ's light to shine through my imperfections, to let anybody know, regardless of where they're at, there's always hope. And then what I do is I do business consulting, purpose coaching to help individuals and organizations achieve their desired outcome by inspiring hope in their lives and then hopefully introduce them to my friend Jesus. So I wake up every day and it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
I don't whether I close a deal, whether I get a new client, whether I feel happy, whether I feel sad, it doesn't matter. All that matters is every day, whenever I wake up and I open my eyes, I'm like, okay, where can we go inspire hope in other people's lives? It's easy. I don't care what I'm doing for a living anymore. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether or not the world seems to be crumbling around me. None of it matters because I've gone through it. I've been hopeless and I know that there's no reason to live it anymore. And so I can live it. I can live that one word every single day of my life. And I tell everybody the same story. And I repeat this in my mind daily. As I leave conversations, it's like, man, if that is the last person I ever have a conversation with, and I get hit by a bus, and they have to tell my eulogy based off of the last conversation I had with them, what would they say? And if it's not hope, I didn't do it right. And so when you live life with that amount of intentionality, that amount of humanity, that amount of just seeing other people as humans, not as a disposable thing, it changes something inside of you. You get that peace, you get that joy, you get that purpose, and then even in the hard times, like you can reframe it into something to where it's like, man, you know what? It's not the way that I thought. Expectations are dangerous, very, very dangerous. I try to live with no expectations, and it allows you to just really start living life with strong opinions held loosely, which is what Simon Sinek said on a podcast I listened to here recently. And I mean, for what's coming in the next 5 years with technology and everything, people are going to have to be very adaptable and they're going to have to be very okay with adjusting themselves, because if you're not, you are going to get washed into the system and you're going to be in a position where you're going to be very, very helpless. And so, I'm really, really passionate about really figuring out how to help people start connecting with each other, help people to break out of these unhealthy cycles, help people to realize that, if your mom said something to you when you were growing up and it really hurt your feelings, it probably hurts her a lot more than it hurts you. And if you just dropped that barrier and went and told her you loved her, it's going to feel a lot better than if she passes away and you never get the opportunity to. Mm-hmm. I learned that with my mom. My mom passed away last year from bone marrow cancer. And, we had a real broken relationship for a long time. But I tell you what, man, cancer sucks. But at the same time, I'm so grateful that I was given a year and a half with her, because I was able to experience a life with her. Because I didn't understand my mom. I didn't want to understand my mom. Really, I didn't want to. I just wanted to look at my mom and blame her for a lot of the things that happened to my life growing up because of the way I was raised. It wasn't her fault. She did the best she could at the tools she was given, based off of the tools that her parents gave her, based off of the tools that their parents gave them. She did the best she could. And so as soon as I dropped that, man, I lived such a beautiful period of life with my mom leading up to the moment that she died, all the way to the point where God gave me a gift, man. I'll never forget the day my mom died. This really shook me to the core, man. I was trying to get to the hospital as much as possible and going and seeing her, and she ended up going into hospice. And the very last day I got busy. And, my dad called me. He's like, you should really come up here. And I remember I had a moment where I was trying to go into busy mode because I had to be at a meeting for a client. Had to be at a meeting with a client. He called and said, man, I need you here at this time. And I remember making a really tough decision. I told him, I was like, man, I can't be there at that time. I got to go be with my mom and I'm going to be late. And I remember the conversation leading up to walking into my mom's room, and she was on hospice at this point. It's she's passing away. She's not coherent. But I remember walking into that. I remember the conversation. God is so good, because the conversation leading up to it was my buddy called me and he needed some help. And so the conversation, because I created space for my mom, I wasn't rushing. So I gave him space. Then I got to walk in and be with my dad and my sister. And I listened to, my favorite song by Brandon Lake, which is Gratitude. And I listened to that song and just cried with my mom because I just knew deep in my soul it was the last time I was ever going to see my mom in life. Like, I knew it. Like, it was like so real. And I remember like being there as long as I could. And then I just felt peace. I was like, okay, like you've done it. And I remember going to that meeting, and I went to that meeting for my client, and he was doing this group share thing where all the employees for his company were going around and they were all sharing about a win they had for the week. And I remember I was the very last person that walked in, and they were like, "Hey man, what was your win for the week?" And I remember someone cracked a joke because I was like in like a nice like shirt, and they're like, "Well, it looks like you just got off the golf course," And it was funny because I learned a valuable lesson in just that statement. It was like, number one, like, nobody knows what you've come from and what you've gone through. Number two, don't ever judge someone for what they said because they don't understand. Number three, don't allow someone else's projection to affect your purpose. And so instead of like receiving that and being upset about it, I said, guys, like, honestly, I just saw my mom for the last time. And if there's one thing I would encourage anybody in this room to do, if you have a loved one, if you have a mom, if you have a dad, if you have a sibling, if you have an ex, if you have someone in your life that has hurt you, or has done something to you and there's a broken relationship, reach out to them. Like, because you don't know how that phone call could change their lives and your life, because there might not be a tomorrow. And one of the guys that was in there called his mom. His mom died 2 months later. So you never know whenever it comes to your life, your purpose, your intentionality, how that can literally completely change someone else's trajectory in life just by being a little bit vulnerable and living with purpose and intentionality. Because we might die tomorrow, man. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. The world's really, really weird. So like, start being intentional today. Go ahead and heal the relationships. Don't hold the grudges. It's not worth it. You're just going to shorten your lifespan and deter yourself from actually living out a purpose, which will bring you that joy and peace that everybody desires.
And that vulnerability just brings you so much strength as well. You know? Like, first, thank you for sharing such an intimate moment, because I know what it's like to see a loved one for the last time. But that's all I thought of was strength. Is you get so much strength from experiencing those moments, but then also sharing those moments. It goes back to the journaling and then reading for perspective and then sharing with others. You're building a community with those people through that statement. You know, if you have a loved one, you should reach out. And then someone did and had not an exact, but a very similar situation as you. And I think it's, for me personally, the more vulnerable I've become, the better my connections have become. The more this is only the second time we've seen each other. And we've talked for probably 4 or 5 hours total on and off the pod. But like, what a way to jumpstart a relationship, And I would have never been in a state, and maybe you either, to want to have these type of shared moments where I can be vulnerable. You can be vulnerable. We can do a test on what I feel like purpose is. Like, that's strength you build up over time through that vulnerability, but then it's deepening those connections, and I feel blessed that I've been able to get more of those. And that's when you have to kind of lean back and thank God for just putting those opportunities in front of you at good times, I guess I would say, because like I said, with that test, if you would have asked me that years ago, there would have been different answers, or they would have been answers for other people. My mom, my dad, you, my significant other, my sister, my nephews. It would be for someone else. Instead of when you ask me those questions, I feel a strength of identity where I want to answer them correctly. And same way you walked into that room and was able to be honest, I would be honest in the situation where I can share what I've went through and why I'm right here. And I think that's why on those words, when you said, why are you here today? I thought of this conversation, but then deeper, I thought I wouldn't even be here today with the opportunity to say, come in, Adam, and have a coffee, and then let's do a podcast. I wouldn't even have that without intentionality, without taking action. 8 years ago, getting into real estate, or long before that, trying to make decisions of not being in certain groups and trying to go another direction. Same with you, hitting the jail and you're like, not for me. I'm going to take a step forward. That intentionality has become so great. And I just can't go back, or I can't not say like how grateful and thankful I am for moments like this. Because like I said, we haven't spent that much time together, but it's been powerful time spent. And I think that's maybe going back to what you said about people being a little more human and allowing the relationship to go where it goes. I mean, I've made a vow verbally or internally that we have authentic conversations. And now I'm learning about a moment where you could have been at rock bottom again and you chose strength instead. You chose hope. And I think that's good for people to hear, you know, because everyone is going through something and you're not alone and certain things don't make you weak. And your story, as long as you're taking out those victim mindsets or those why me's, your story is the fuel that's going to get you to where you want to go. Just like you did with the opposite on ChatGPT. Like, chaos made you want peace. And that's all I want is peace. You know, hopelessness made you want hope. And the thing that's, I think, cool about you and I is it's for us, but then it's for anyone that we interact with. Anyone I interact with, I want to be peaceful or positive. Anyone you interact with, you want it to be hopeful, positive. So it's just, I can just only think of it as a blessing to have people like yourself. And not only for me, but listeners, the people you see at the coffee shop. But in this moment, for me, I'm grateful that God put us in a position to have this moment, because it was more meaningful to me than maybe you expected or that we expected. It goes back to those expectations, like you said. But a lot of presence and purpose led us right here. Can't thank you enough for that. Seriously.
Dude, I love you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. And man, I know I said it, but congrats on the book. You had mentioned imposter syndrome, and like, it just takes action. And we're sitting here with, you know, your name on the book. Beautiful book, by the way.
Yeah, this is for you, by the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Beautiful
book with a lot of intentionality, and you have the right to do things like this. And I think it's beautiful that you took the risk for yourself.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I know we have so much that we could talk about, and because we talk a lot about international travel and other cultures and the stuff we implement daily, but I think the passion you provided today is everything people needed to hear, and just want to give you your flowers on that. Thank you for being you, because what you're doing is bigger than you, and you realize that, but you're not going to even be able to fathom the mark you leave from all these, you know, daily actions. So I appreciate you so much, brother.
Thanks, man. Same to you. You know, after our podcast, and it takes a lot of intentionality and a lot of grit to keep on doing a podcast. Yeah. You know, you started your podcast after me, and you've done more episodes than I do. And so, you know, just keep on keeping on, dude, because it'll take you weird places.
Well, it already has taken me places I wouldn't expect, and I felt a lot of power and passion and love from our first interview, Eddie Ote Coffee, and I was looking forward to this. I mean, I still remember I was just leaving a house in Tuttle when we booked it. You're like, August 5th, yep, I'm good with that. I'm like, cool, let's book it, because I need to schedule that for me. I know the podcast is for everyone that listens to it, but I knew I needed to sit down with you. And we will sit down again, and we'll have other podcasts, and we'll have other interactions, but it was meant for a reason. You know, when we talked before you went to Budapest, we're like, no, we're going to do something. We're going to continue to do things together. And I think it was for a reason.
Yeah, I love it, dude. And thank you for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Very thankful for you to tell your story. But for the most important part is the hope, like you're saying, and why.